In this session, we are going to discuss about exception handling case in method overriding. Okay, so what are the rules we need to be follow when we are declaring or throws a exception from the method o in the case of method overriding. Okay, so case number one. So I have a parent class and parent class having a method, and that parent class method is throwing an exception. So it is not necessary for overridden method which is defined into the child class to throws that exception. Okay, so in simple word we can say when the parent class has declared an exception, the child class can declare without exception. Okay, now second scenario, when the parent class does not define any exception. Okay, so in the case of child class can define the exception, but the case is only unchecked exception. Okay, so unchecked exception is what are the runtime exception, right? Like array index out of bound exception, that is the example of the unchecked exception. Now third case, when the parent class has a declared as any exception, so same exceptions we can throw from the overridden method which is defined into the child class, not any other exception. Now one more scenario, when any parent class has defined the any exception within the child class, the subclass exception can be thrown. Okay, so we will see the scenarios about this, so you will have the better idea about this exception handling in the method overriding. So let's move on the practical session. Thank you. So here you can see that I have a one class as a parent exception handling which is having a method as a display, another child class which I have created which is extending my parent class, and it is having the overridden method as a display. And let me change the child one. Okay, now we will see the exception name. So case number one, whenever any parent class, now you can see my parent class does not declare any exception, we are not throwing any exception from the parent class. So in this case the child class can declare only unchecked exception. Okay, so unchecked exceptions like throws array index out of bound exception. Now this is allowed. Okay, let's verify array index out of bound, which is extending the index out of bound, and you can see that it is a runtime exception. It is called as a unchecked exception. Okay, so this is the case. Let's do one thing. Let me option handling. Okay, and this parent object dot I'm calling by display. Now you can see that it is allowed, means within the parents we have not defined, we are not throwing any exception. In the child overridden method we can throw the exception, but the condition is that we can only throw unchecked exception. Okay, now let me try to run it. Okay, you can see the output of this child. Now in the same scenario they are saying that they only throw the unchecked exception. Let me try to my checked exception. I'm trying to do it. Now you can see that it is giving my error. And what is the error it is giving? It is saying that exception file not found, which we are trying to throw, which is a checked exception, is not compatible with throws goes in parent exception handling. Okay, so it is not allowing it, means this is we verified the first scenario. Okay, let me so in the first scenario what we have learned that if any exception is not throwing from the parent class, we can throw the exception from the child class, but the case is that we can throw only the unchecked exception. Okay, the first scenario we have understood. Now the second scenario, when the parent class has declared any exception. Okay, let me any exception. So we will see the both example throws. First is IO exception. Okay, I'm throwing the IO exception. The child class can declare without exception. Okay, within the, sorry, let me remove it. Let me define into the parent. Okay, so first I'm throwing the IO exception. Okay, so here I need to handle this throws IO exception. Okay, now try to run it. Means I'm throwing the exception from the parent. Okay, and within the child I'm not throwing any exception, so it is allowed. Okay, the second scenario also we have understood, so you can see that. Now you can see that when I try, because my exception is handling over here, right, in the parent class. In the child class there is no exception, and we are creating the object of the child. We are doing the method overriding at the runtime, right, during the runtime. So we are our program is going to call this method, but at the compile time we have creating the object of the parent exception. So parent object is calling to a display. The compile time it is looking for this. That's why it is asking me key it is throwing the IO exception, so you need to also throw the exception from here. Okay, for example, if I will write like this way, then no need to throw the exception. Okay, so during the compile time also it is calling to this particular method which is not having any which is not throwing any exception. That's why we need to be handle this. But when the case is different like this way, okay, so during the compile time it is checking this particular method and asking us to forcefully handle the exception, and then when we you do like this and it will be handled. So this is also our interview question which is asked, so you need to be ready for this as well. Okay, so now, okay, in the second rule, what they are saying, ki whenever when the parent class has declared any exception, right now we just checked with the IO exception, which is we can say that it's a compile time exception. Okay, so now let's take the example of the runtime exception. So array index out of bound exception. Okay, now in the child, it is also allowing. Okay, array index out of bound, which is having the index out of bound. So why child is not complaining? Let me remove this. Okay, so here you can see that whenever this is a runtime exception, so no need to handle over here. Okay, but whenever I have defined as a compile time exception, or can say as a checked exception. Okay, so it is asking us to forcefully handle that exception. That is a general rule for the exception. You are already aware about that, but I have just to repeat this thing. Okay, so here we can define whenever you are throwing any exception, means we can throw any kind of the exception, either it is a compile time or a runtime. We can throw from the parent class, but in the case of the child class, no need to be defined it will allow us. Okay, so two rules we have understand. Now the third rule, the parent class has declared the exception, like array index out of bound, they have defined it. So what I will do, the similar exception I'm throwing from here. Okay, so this is allowed. Okay, now another case, in the parent, if I define as a parent class of this and using the subclass of this is also allowed. Okay, now this scenario and this one, sorry, let me see, what happening, let me save it. This is also allowed. Okay, so we have checked about this this scenario because this is a runtime. The runtime we can do anything. Now check for the another scenario for the file not found exception. This is a compile time exception. The similar exception I can define. Now try to define. Okay. Now compile time again. It will ask us to handle this exception. So let me throw the file not found exception. Okay. Yes. So now try to file not found exception is a its parent exception is a IO exception. Now this is not allowed. Okay, because the parent in the parent display method we are throwing the exception, and here the exception hierarchy is above. So due to that it is not allowed. But the reverse order, if I call IO exception here, so in the child, okay, here IO exception. Now it is allowed. Okay, in this session we have covered all the error handling in overriding in the Java. So thank you for watching this entire tutorial regarding the method overriding. So hope you have cleared with all this thing. Please subscribe my channel and support us. Thank you.